Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Elder Needs Law YouTube channel, where we try to get out practical, useful information to everyone so you can become a more educated legal consumer. And today is no different. I have with me a very special guest. And to set you up a little bit, here I am in Florida. And I think, as the world knows, there is a very strong connection between Florida and New York. And one thing that I always try to make clear to my clients is Medicaid does not travel, meaning the way you get someone eligible for Medicaid to help pay for care, whether it's at home, whether it's in an ALF, whether it's in a nursing home, that's going to be a little bit different depending on what state you're in. And today we're going to talk about some of the differences between New York and Florida. And guess what? I'm not licensed in New York, so I cannot provide that legal service here, but certainly I'm always happy to make recommendations. And today, that's why I'm very, very thrilled to have Brittni Sullivan, who is a partner with the Berner Law Group, who is in New York, is a licensed Medicaid planning and elder law attorney in New York. And we're going to talk today about some of the differences between what Medicaid provides, how you become eligible, what the eligibility requirements are, and the differences between New York and Florida, because I think so many of you out there will find that information to be valuable, and I encounter it sort of all the time. So Brittni, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today. Please introduce yourself a little bit. Tell us a little bit about your background, what you do, and thank you for being here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. As you stated, there's such an overlap between New York and Florida, people traveling back and forth. So I think it's a great topic. But as far as background for me, I work at the Berner Law Group. Our office has been open for almost 30 years. I've been here for about 10. And we're truly a trust estates elder law firm. So really helping our clients with their estate planning needs, with their long-term care planning needs, and really being up to date on all of the Medicaid eligibility for whether somebody wants to, obviously remain in their own home and access services through the Medicaid program, as well as if they need to transition into a nursing facility, getting a pay source for that facility as well. Our primary office, and the office that I work out of, is on Long Island. We're really mid Long Island and Setauket, but we also have a full office in New York City, as well as on the east end of Long Island in West Hampton, and a satellite office in East Hampton. So we're really helping people plan in the city, in the boroughs, and all across Long Island. So I'm really excited to be here. Thank you.
That's great. And I think in New York, almost even a little more so importantly than compared to Florida, I think we were talking about this earlier, that the local county government has real differences in how they process these applications. And so it's really important in New York that you're with a law firm who's familiar with a lot of those local differences. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, on Long Island, we've got two counties. We've got Nassau and we've got Suffolk. And then we obviously have HRA is actually the one in the city, Human Resources Association. They're not even called themselves, Department of Social Services. So that's really where we are in our practice. Upstate New York is going to be a little different. So certainly having an attorney that practices in that county and is familiar with those county weird nuances. I see a lot of differences between our city clients and our Suffolk clients. So when we're tackling a file and we're coming up with a plan, that plan is going to be a little different for someone who's located in the city and somebody who's located out in Suffolk County, for sure.
Yeah. So in Florida, the differences are not as pronounced. We truly represent people statewide, because the state, there's one manual that everyone throughout the state has to abide by, and so the differences just really aren't as pronounced. And it's interesting. I mean, there are little minor tweaks, but the overall strategies really don't change. So that's one interesting difference is locale. Where I really want to start is actually we were talking about this before we started recording, the asset and income differences.
Yeah, absolutely.
Depending on whether you are looking for care in the community or whether you're looking for care in a long-term care facility like a nursing home, very, very different between New York and Florida. So let's talk about that. Let's start with the asset test. The asset limits. If you are a single individual, tell us what they are in New York for a single individual and a married couple.
Sure. So a single individual, and this could be somebody who's married, but just applying as a single person,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
So, you could have a husband and wife, let's say, husband needs Medicaid. The wife's assets are going to be exempt because we have spousal refusal here. But
Mhm.
as the husband's assets, so the resource limit is going to be $30,182.
Wow.
And that's made up of any non-qualified funds, right?
Right.
Checking, savings, money market, life insurance, cash value, non-qualified annuities. That's going to be it for a single person.
Mhm.
For a married couple who are both applying,
Mhm.
right? It's going to be $40,821 of
Right.
those same assets.
Right.
And that's going to be true whether someone's in the community
Mhm.
or whether someone's in a nursing home. So even if somebody's going to a nursing home, a single individual can still maintain just above $30,000 to
Wow.
their name and still
Wow.
qualify for Medicaid.
That's one huge difference between Florida and New York. In New York, you have this 30,182 asset limitation for a single individual. In Florida, that is a $2,000 asset limit. So we are
Big
nowhere
difference.
near you guys in terms of what you're allowed to have to your name, and in terms of, again, non-qualified funds, bank, brokerage account, CDs, money market, all that good stuff. Okay, very good. And for a single individual, if you are receiving care, now I also want to make sure that people are clear. When we say the community, we're talking about receiving care at home or in an assisted living facility. Is that the same in New York?
So it's the same in New York.
Okay.
Yep. So the assisted living is under the community
Okay,
umbrella.
very good.
The big difference is we just, especially on Long Island, we don't have many assisted livings that have
Right.
Medicaid beds.
Ah,
So,
interesting.
most of my clients who are going for community Medicaid
Right.
are at home.
Yep.
Right. And they're looking for an aid or daycare services. So
Yep.
whether they want to, leave their home on, a couple days a week and go to a daycare program, a lot of those accept Medicaid and provide transportation. A
Yep.
local one we have here is through the Veterans Home, which is a phenomenal place.
Sure.
But yeah, it's mostly people in the home with a handful of assisted livings. And as you can imagine, the wait lists for those are pretty steep.
Yep.
But we do have a couple assisted livings on the west end of Long Island that are trying to introduce some Medicaid beds. So we're hopeful that the assisted living program kicks off, but certainly all under the community Medicaid standard.
So some differences between New York and Florida. Similarly, community Medicaid down here, which we commonly refer to as Medicaid waiver or home and community-based services, is for people who want to receive care at home or in an assisted living facility. But we have plenty of assisted living facilities, especially in South Florida, who are happy
Right.
to accept Medicaid. The wait list can be long. One of our services, something that we're able to do, is we can kind of massage that process a little bit, and we can drastically reduce the amount of time people spend on that wait list. So we know, like, the state average is somewhere like 10 to 14 months. I mean, people can be waiting a really, really long
Wow.
time to get into these ALFs, or not to get in, but to get help paying for the ALF, or to help get payment receiving care, or to help get benefits at home. But we typically are able to reduce that waiting time to somewhere between 2 and 4 months, maybe 5 on the outset, maybe 1 if we get lucky, but 2 to 4 is, but we can't eliminate it altogether. So that's
Right.
perfectly the purpose. So, okay, so terrific. Now, if you're in the community, which again we've defined as ALF or home, we've talked about the asset limitation. What about the income cap? What do you guys have?
Sure. So for a single person, it's $1,697.
Mm-hmm.
Anything over and above that can be set to a pooled income trust. So in
Mm-hmm.
New York, obviously they're all charity-based companies that have pooled income trusts. I think at this point in time, we probably have 12 to 14 different companies in New York that you can choose from. So we have clients, open up an account through that charitable organization. And then every month, anything over and above the $1,697 would be sent to the pooled income trust.
Okay. Okay. And if you are in a nursing facility, so not applying for community Medicaid, how does your income operate in that setting?
Sure. So for most of our clients, it's only going to be a $50 allowance.
Mhm.
And that's all sources of income. You know, people always ask me, well, is my social security exempt? Right?
Right.
No, unfortunately not. Are my VA benefits exempt? No, you know, so it's all streams of income are countable. You get to maintain $50, and then the balance is going to go directly to the nursing home. They
Mhm.
call it the NAMI, the
Mm.
net available monthly income, and that goes to offset whatever Medicaid is paying the
Okay.
facility.
Okay.
The only two exemptions are going to be if you file with an intent to return home,
Mhm.
meaning that you say, okay, Medicaid, I just need a little bit of a time in the facility, but it is my intent to go home. Instead of only having a $50 allowance, they'll give you that $1,697.
Mhm.
But you can't put the over and above then goes to the nursing home. But the thought is then that's, you know, roughly $1,700 can help be used to pay for your household expenses while you're
Mm.
in the nursing home, and then you go back. They'll give that to you about for 6 months.
Got it.
And then after that, they say, all right, you're going down to the $50.
Got it.
And you've got to contribute more. And then the only other exception is if you have a spouse living in the community and that
Mhm.
spouse is low income, there
Mhm.
could be a carve out from the institutionalized spouse's income, and that can go to the community spouse.
Right,
But then
depending on
again, the
how-
balance,
Right. what the
right,
community
would
spouse needs.
have
Yep.
to go to the nursing facility.
Yeah, so again, some similarities and differences. So in Florida, we have an income cap regardless of where you are, whether you are in a nursing home or in a at home or in an ALF. If your income in 2023, the number goes up every year. If your income is higher than $2,742, in either case, you're not eligible for Medicaid unless you utilize either what we have here is called a qualified income trust. We also sometimes call it a Miller trust. I don't think you guys have that in New York.
Right,
Or
no.
you can use a pooled special needs trust. So we can use a pooled trust as well. And that's good for people who maybe don't have a loved one to be a trustee that they trust to be a trustee to operate their Miller trust for them. So the pooled special needs trust is a way of getting a professional involved. Another bit of a difference is if this is more of an issue when someone's at home. If you're using a Miller trust, funds coming out of the Miller trust can only be used for basically health, wellness, or medical related expenses. It can't be used to pay for property taxes or, you know, the electric bill or something like that.
Right.
So sometimes we have to use a pooled trust in a home setting because there's no limit on how on how funds coming out of a pooled trust can be spent as long as it benefits the Medicaid beneficiary. So that's super interesting. So in essence, in New York, if you're at home or in an ALF, you have a $1,697,000 income cap. If you're above that, you kind of forced into that pooled income trust.
Correct.
If you're in a nursing home, your income really kind of becomes irrelevant at that point. It's all going to the nursing home except $50.
Correct.
In Florida, either way, if your income is higher, so our income cap's a little bit higher than yours, but if your income's over 2742, it has to pass through the qualified income trust or the pooled trust on its way to the nursing home. But very similarly, it's all going to the nursing home,
Right.
whether it has to pass through this trust first or not. Except in Florida, instead of 50, if you're in a nursing home, you get to keep $130. So again, not a big difference there,
Right.
but it still has to maybe pass through an
Pass
income
through.
trust first on its way to the nursing facility, which is kind of interesting. And then very similarly, if you have a community spouse who's not in need of Medicaid, him or herself, they may be allowed an income diversion if they're in a nursing home, depending on kind of what their needs are, and
Okay.
that's interesting. Okay. Good, terrific. That's like a lot of really important differences. So again, when people who, we deal with people who have family in New York or they have family in Florida and they're thinking about, well, here's what my lawyer in New York did, so why don't we just do the
Right.
same thing in Florida? We have to tell them, listen, that may not work. And of course, it's not going to work, and vice versa. You need to speak to an attorney who is licensed and experienced in your respective state. So let's move on to Homestead. Tell me about your primary residence. I don't know that you have a homestead, the
Right.
actual term homestead in New York, but tell me how New York treats someone's primary residence.
Sure. Yeah. So it's definitely going to make a difference if you're residing in the home or who is residing in the home as to whether or not it qualifies as a homestead.
Yep.
So, basic somebody comes and they want services in their home, presumably they are living in their home. And in that case, the home will be exempt because they themselves as the Medicaid recipient are living in the home, right? The catch to that is if they pass away and that home is owned in their individual name and it passes through their estate, then there's going to be recovery from Medicaid for any and all services paid for on that person's behalf.
Got it.
So in our practice, whether we've done the Medicaid or whether somebody comes to us or has a family member who is currently on Medicaid, the ownership of the home almost always is recommended to change because even though it's exempt while they're living, we want to try, if possible, to prevent that estate recovery. And a lot of times that's doing an irrevocable or a revocable trust to avoid the Medicaid lien at the end. Once someone leaves their home, it is no longer exempt. So that could be somebody's on community Medicaid, they're living in their home, and then there's a decision for them to move in with their daughter.
Right.
Now that home is no longer exempt, even though they're on Medicaid, even though they're on community Medicaid and they're receiving community Medicaid services. Once they're no longer in the home, that home is a countable resource. So that's definitely an important distinction. It's not that if you're on community Medicaid, the home is just exempt.
So similarly, you're transferring the property to someone else's name in that setting.
Exactly.
And I think a very important point is, at least for now, I think that might change for you guys. I think you had told me that there is no transfer of assets penalty. There's really no look back if you're in the community. Is that correct?
Correct. That's correct. So we can, in the month of May, transfer assets and apply for community-based services June 1st. So that's obviously something that we utilize frequently. As far as, and then obviously if somebody's in an assisted living, it's still community Medicaid. We would be transferring the primary home if it hadn't been sold or anything like that. Nursing home is dealt with a little differently. If you have a single person and they are, they obviously leave their home to go to a nursing facility, they can file with an intent to return home and Medicaid will allow them to own that home. Again, it's usually about a 6-month period, but if they do not return home in that 6-month period, Medicaid's going to say, okay, enough's enough. We're going to kick you off because you've got this resource that you could presumably sell and use those funds.
Got it.
The exceptions when somebody is in a nursing home to when the home is exempt is if a spouse is living there, if a disabled child or minor children are living in the home. And if we have what's referred to as a caretaker child. So a child who has been living with the parent for at least 2 years immediately prior to them needing a nursing home, the home can be exempt. As well as, this is a little bit of a weird one, but it does come up, the sibling with an equity interest. So sibling living in the home for at least 1 year, that then the home is exempt as well. But really outside of that, if the person owns a home, it's a countable resource and it has to be typically sold and part of the proceeds used to pay down for the care needs.
Got it. Yeah. So some similarities and differences. In Florida, we have a much stronger homestead protection. The house is your castle. Florida is very serious about protecting people's homes. So we have a home equity limit, whether you're in a nursing home or in the community. The home equity limit as of 2023 is $688,000, which means for example, if your house is worth $700,000, but you have a $50,000 mortgage, that's only $650,000 in equity. You're below that 68 number, and the house is safe from Medicaid. And what we do is we can utilize either putting the house in a revocable trust or a ladybird deed so that after our client passes away, it avoids probate. But even if they don't avoid probate, the homestead is still creditor protected, even from Medicaid touching it, as long as it's going to heirs. Meaning if it's going to a charity or it's going to some friend, then you don't get that same homestead protection. But if it's going to heirs at law, then Medicaid can never touch it. Now, if there are other assets that have to go through probate, then Medicaid becomes a creditor like any other creditor, and they get to submit their claims and get paid out first. but we're usually able to do a pretty good job of making sure that right now, Florida has not expanded Medicaid estate recovery. So as long as there is no probate, Medicaid is not able to go after assets after someone has passed away, with very, very limited exception. But we either eliminate or drastically reduce what Medicaid is able to hold their hand out asking for in the state of Florida. If we have a married couple, both of which who are living in the home, then there is no equity limit. It could be worth $3 million, and Medicaid can't say anything about it. It's only if there's a single individual who owns the home that you have that $688,000. Again, that changes every year, but that's the equity limit for 2023. What's also interesting, I think, is we also have the sibling and the child care, the 2-year child caregiver exception, the 1-year sibling exception. I have not seen the sibling 1 year. I have not been able to use that yet, but it is out there. So yeah, in Florida, we have an intent to return home rule as well, but if you just state it, Medicaid lets you have it, right? Even if you're living with a child, even if you're living in a facility, even if there's no realistic likelihood that you will ever be able to return home, as long as you state it, hey, if there's some miraculous recovery, yes, I would love to return home, then they'll allow you to keep the home. There's no 6-month waiting rule. It's just it's almost like assumed. You barely have to you put one little sentence in a period and you're good. So another little difference between Florida and New York. So good. That's super interesting. Very, 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 very good stuff. Okay, I think we talked about what you call chronic Medicaid is what we call ICP, which stands for Institutional Care Program. Our nursing home Medicaid program, you call that chronic Medicaid.
Correct.
I think we talked about a lot of the differences already. Anything else that you think is worth noting about that program, or did we cover everything?
No, I mean, obviously, the chronic Medicaid, we've got a 5-year look back.
Right.
5 years on both the applicant as well as their spouse. So one thing that people, always find really interesting is an exemption to the 5-year look back is you can transfer an unlimited amount of money to your spouse.
Yep.
But then if your spouse gifts that money, it's going to come back and haunt the applicant.
Interesting.
Right.
Interesting.
So when they look at a 5-year look back, even if the assets were first given to the spouse and then the spouse either puts them into an irrevocable trust or gifts them to kids or grandkids or whatever, that's still going to come back. And right now, our divisor for 2023 on Long Island is $14,136. So for roughly every $14,000 that has been gifted, they're going to penalize you for 1 month.
Right.
And of course, 1 month on Long Island is more than $14,000.
Right,
so,
right.
A lot of times, sometimes, $50,000 worth of gifting is going to cause a penalty that's really going to cost the person like $65,000 worth of nursing home care.
Yeah.
So, it's just the 5-year look back, and we're really just obviously looking for any type of gifting.
Right.
People always ask me, like, what's the safe amount?
Right.
There really isn't.
Right.
Are they going to go after the person who wrote a couple $100 for birthdays and holidays? No.
Same. Yeah.
Yeah. They're looking for patterns. They're looking for dollar amounts. They're looking for, whatever they need to look for to try to, assess some sort of penalty against the person.
Good. And I think I want to mention the look back period in New York in a community setting again, because I know right now there is no look back period, but I think there is some threat of them imposing a look back period in the near future. I want to say only because here we are in May 2023, maybe people watch this in a few months from now or early next year. And what's the latest on that?
Sure. Yeah. So it was actually passed in April of 2020, which was a bizarre time to pass anything.
Right.
It was like literally everything was shut down, and they said, like, this is a good idea. Let's maybe pass a look back. So the proposed look back is 2.5 years. So 30 months, half of the chronic.
Right.
I think that's how they came up with it.
Got it.
And they were actually supposed to institute it October 1st of 2020. But they told people, if you got your planning done before October 1st of 2020, you were going to be grandfathered in. So we saw a huge surge of people doing their planning in August and September, setting up
Right.
their trusts, getting the
Right.
plan started.
Right.
And then it didn't happen. Really, one, because there's no real guidance, what's the divisor, what's 1 month of home care? I don't know, right?
Right.
Like it varies between everybody. So
Right.
what's the divisor they're going to use? What are they going to be looking for with gifting? So as of October 1st of 2020, they kind of just started kicking it every 3 months.
Right.
So every 3 months we were like holding our breath. And then finally, at the start of this year, the Department of Health said, if it gets rolled out, it's not going to be until May of 2024. So we've kind of been able to breathe this
Okay.
year,
Okay.
and it's business as normal, but there's actually pending litigation trying to pending legislation. I'm sorry, pending legislation that's looking to just get it squashed.
Okay.
So, to be determined,
Yep.
but certainly we are still applying with no look back or anything like that.
So here's the moral of that story, as far as I'm concerned. If you are watching this and you're in New York, or you have a relative in New York and they want to stay at home and get Medicaid, call Brittni Sullivan at the Berner Law Group.
Yes, for sure.
Don't delay, because we don't know when this is going to go into effect, really. Brittni, if someone wants to reach you, your firm, what is the best way to do that?
Yeah, so we have an extensive website, so certainly anybody can go on. We've got a ton of webinars that we gave, especially during COVID. So just to get more information, if there's a topic we didn't touch on today, I'm sure we have a webinar or a blog, articles. You can see all the attorneys and everything that we do. There's obviously a spot on the website that you can send an inquiry, or we have a whole team of receptionists that handle our consults. So just our main number is a great way to reach us. We send out a client questionnaire that you fill out in preparation of the meeting. And then the goal of the consultation is really to gauge what the goals are, what the person really needs as far as an estate plan, and really setting them up with a proposal and plan to move forward.
Brittni, this is great. I think people have learned a lot. Certainly, we could be talking for 2 hours. We still wouldn't get through all the differences between New York and Florida Medicaid. If you're in New York, give Berner Law Group a shout, because I love that they have a commitment to education. They care about their clients. And Brittni, thank you so much for being here today. If you're in Florida, I hope you guys give me a call, reach out to us. Also, lots of informational material, webinars, YouTube videos. I try to answer people's very specific questions at elderneedslaw.com, or searching for us on our YouTube. And again, Brittni, thank you for being with us today, and we appreciate all the information you've shared.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And like you said, I think just getting the word out and the differences is so key for people. So I really appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. All right. Terrific.
Thank you.